Welcome back to another episode of the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. Here we go again. Today we have Joe Kinser. Joe,
Hello,
you're running for office.
I am.
That's awesome. What are you running for?
I'm running to be the Berkeley County Prosecuting Attorney.
Awesome. Let's talk about background like we always start with everybody.
Sure.
So pretty much lead the way.
Absolutely. So I am a native West Virginian, although not originally from this area. I'm from the other panhandle, from Wheeling originally. And then I went to Marsh University for undergrad, so I moved to Huntington, West Virginia. And when I was there, I got my degree in criminal justice. And then directly after undergrad, I moved to Morgantown and went to West Virginia University, to the College of Law there. And immediately upon graduating from the law school, I moved to the Eastern Panhandle. So I've kind of been all over the state, but settled out here, and that was probably 13, 14 years ago or so, and I've been out here ever since. And I'm married to my wife, Chastity. We have a almost 8-year-old daughter, Kara. She will tell you she's almost 8. And we just love it out here. Absolutely. I don't think there's anywhere else in the state I'd rather live.
And what is your position here now?
So I am the Senior Assistant Prosecuting Attorney for Berkeley County, which is, there's the face.
Yeah.
That's a long title. So the elected prosecutor has many assistant prosecutors that work underneath of him or her. And so Katie Delegetti is our elected prosecutor here in Berkeley. And I'm one of the 13 assistant prosecutors that work for her. I just happen to be the number 2, so the chief. I'm Katie's right hand. And the official title for that is Senior Assistant Prosecutor, but we can call it the chief, you can call it the whatever you want. It's Katie and me, and then there's 12 additional assistants.
Well, how long have you been in that position, or how long have you been an assistant prosecutor here?
I've been an assistant prosecutor here in Berkeley for 9 years now.
And then before that?
Before that, I actually was on the other side. I worked for the public defender office out here for a few years right out of law school. That was my first introduction to this area, was working on the criminal defense side as a public defender.
Okay. So what inspired you to step up into a higher role?
Well, to step up to where I am now as the senior assistant, that was really just a function of the work and the kind of cases that I was prosecuting and the trust that built between Katie and I, the current elected prosecutor. And over time, it just kind of settled into that. We have a wonderful relationship. We can rely upon each other and trust each other to get stuff done. And we try a lot of cases together as a pair. And it just kind of happened.
Is she resigning? Or are you challenged?
Oh, no. So she has decided to run for the open circuit judge seat. It's really kind of complicated, but the legislature decided to break up the normal circuit. It's always been Berkeley, Morgan, and Jefferson County. Together, they are a judicial circuit. And what the legislature did was they said they were going to make Jefferson County its own circuit. And so it will, instead of being Berkeley, Morgan, Jefferson, it'll be Berkeley and Morgan as a unit, and then Jefferson as a unit. And in that mix, they created a second judge spot just for Jefferson County. And Judge Bridget Cohey moved to Jefferson County and announced that she was going to run for that new spot in Jefferson. And so what that left here was a vacancy for judge. And Katie, whose father is a incredibly well-known and historic circuit judge here, Judge Wilkes, she saw that opportunity and talked about it, and then she decided she wanted to go for it. And so she's leaving the office for that position, and it was going to leave the boat without a captain. So,
well, let's break it down for Brackens.
yes, sir.
not so. I mean, I know I could do an entire podcast just on how the circuits all break down and what the responsibility and how it's defined, but I don't want to get into that.
Mhm.
The initial challenge I see is, what if she loses? And does that mean she's out? And but if you win, does that mean you just take her position? She's got nowhere to go?
Yes, that's how that would have gone. Now, she, along with every other circuit judge in this region, was fortunate enough to have no one run against them. So, she is in an uncontested election for the circuit judge race, and so that's not something we're going to end up having to worry about. But yeah, there for a while, it was, you know, man, that's going to be weird if she loses for judge and I win for prosecutor. And I told her, I said, Katie, I said, obviously it goes without question, but I I offer you a job.
Seems
Like
weird,
you
yeah.
could certainly work here. And she said, Joe, I can't have a boss anymore.
Oh,
All right, okay, Katie. Oh,
well,
I'll
that's
go.
good. It's a working relationship. That's good. Um, and then are you risking your position currently as the chief or senior if you don't win? Like, are you resigning from your spot, or do you get to fall back and be that person?
So actually, until late last year, there was a county policy that you could not run for office and be a county employee. And so it was going to be a thing where in January, when I filed my official announcement, I was going to have to resign. And thankfully, the Berkeley County Commission looked at that, kind of looked at some legal precedents and said, we don't think that's really legal. We're probably going to have some trouble with that. And they reversed course and removed that as a hindrance to a county employee running for office. But technically, I will say no. There's nothing that would require me to resign if I lost. Um, Historically, if a new prosecutor comes in, it's kind of a clearinghouse normally. It just
Really?
yeah, a lot of, and not from the new not from the new prosecutor. It's just kind of a the way I've seen it happen. I saw that with the 2016 election was the last time there was like a contested overthrow in the office, and I'm one of only three assistants who at this point have lived through that and stayed. This
I find that strange. I mean,
Mhm.
I never plan on running for office or holding a position like that, but if there was like a quote unquote cabinet, I would prefer to have experience on my team rather than new experience come in.
Right, right. And it was not, like when Katie got elected, she did not come in and clean house. The house kind of cleaned out on its own before she came in. And I would think that something similar would happen uh, as it is now. I think that, a lot of the prosecutors in the office now, we've been there for a long time. We've built something and we're proud of it. And I think that if the office were to go in another direction, there would probably be some departures, myself included, which would, I don't want, I love serving the people of Berkeley County. That's why I've been doing it so long. I really love what I do. So hopefully that's not the case. But
So when you run for this position, is it one of those sort of campaigns where I'm going to come in and change this and I'm going to change that, and like are you pushing out those sort of agendas to people to convince them to vote for you, or is it more of a status quo thing?
that's a great question. Well, because I'm the number two in the current administration, I mean, I think it's everybody who's around me knows I support this administration and the things that this administration does. I feel a part of it. So it's weird because normally when you're running for office, especially like your first time running for office, right? Just like you said, it's an excellent question. You want to come in and, well, we want to change this and that and this, and here's how we're going to do all this better. Um, and that's not really what I'm running on. I'm almost kind of running as an incumbent who's not an incumbent because I've felt responsible for helping to shape a lot of the policy that we have and the things that we do. I mean, Katie is the boss, and that, without question, she runs the show. But I've learned what I know about managing this office from watching her do it for 8 years and her style. And we are different people. Katie and I, we are not the same person, but there's not a big laundry list of things that I've just been, oh, waiting for Katie to get out of here so I can change this, that. No, I think we do a great job the way things are going at the office. So one of the things I'm running on is the fact that it would be a seamless transition because, I don't think anybody in this county knows the job better than I do, except for Katie, just because of my proximity um, and the fact that I cover a lot of things for her, I handle a lot of things, and I know the ins and outs of the job so well. Um, but there are of course a couple small things I would like to look at for the future.
Are those things that you would share on this podcast, or things that you thought about?
No, well, some of them are certainly in development, but one thing that I think is important is our victim advocacy services. So I am a lawyer, and I'm a prosecutor, and I like to think I'm a pretty darn good one. But I'm not a social worker, and I'm not a counselor or a therapist. And in our line of work, unfortunately, we're dealing with people who are dealing with difficult things. Some of the worst things that have happened to them in life may have happened, and that's what brings them into your office as a victim of crime. And I am not equipped myself to properly handle that necessarily all the time. I'm focused on the case and how to prosecute the case, how to prove the case, and how to get justice. So we employ a victim advocate whose name is Cora Rutherford, who is going to have a baby just any day now. I can't wait. We're all so excited. She's having a little girl, and but she is everything that I am not. She is wonderful. She is a social worker at heart, and she can help link up victims with resources and help guide them and work with them and translate lawyer speak to them. And then she translates victim speak to us. And she's just a wonderful asset to the office. But she is but one. And Berkeley County is a large county. We handle so many cases. I think, and unfortunately, so many cases that involve victims. And I think that we could benefit by enlarging the program of victim advocacy, having more than just one. I know, I believe you've done interviews with Matt Harvey from Jefferson, our good buddy Matt, and I believe Matt has 4 victim advocates down there in Jefferson. And for comparison, our last grand jury we had 99 indictments. I think Jefferson's last grand jury they had 28. So
that's a flip flop there. It's 4x on the advocates and then 4x on the cases.
You've got it. So, I don't think I would be running to the county commission asking for 3 more advocates, right away. And there's a lot of grant money and things that could be pursued to try to secure those positions to get additional help, maybe even some part-time or something. But I just think looking at the numbers of it, Cora could use some help. I think she does so much as one person, but I think we can expand that program.
Okay, well that was touching on my next question was like challenges in the community. Being a little bit short on, or quite a bit short compared to Jefferson County on the advocates. What are some other challenges the county's facing? And let's follow that up with a success that we're really doing well at.
Sure. Well, I'll keep it nice and confusing and have the same challenge also involve a success. And the challenge is, it's no secret to anybody the drug problems that Berkeley County has, and we see it in manner of overdoses and overdose deaths. We also see it as certain crimes that on paper you look at and, well, that's not a drug offense, but you see enough shopliftings and retail thefts and burglaries of vehicles and things like that. And you look at it and so many of them come back to
The drugs.
the drug problem. And especially with fentanyl, we've been dealing with drugs in the community for a while, but fentanyl really changes the game for several reasons. Most notably is the lethality of fentanyl. People can and do die from this all the time. And the other is the manner in which fentanyl is trafficked in this area. That's a particular concern to me. So, with the heroin problems that we've had and having Narcan available, and there's a whole lot of things that we're doing to help with that. But when we first saw fentanyl come in, it was coming in mixed with heroin, and it was being used, intravenously, and people didn't know that what they were taking was fentanyl, and they were dying. A lot of people were dying. Now, fentanyl, in addition to being trafficked in that form, is also in tablets, pressed fentanyl tablets that look like Xanax pill. It's just, and we're finding them sometimes in the like thousands of pressed fentanyl pills, and that's incredibly terrifying for me because when I think about young people and young people being at parties, and there might be, historically there's drinking at young people parties, there's probably marijuana, and there might even be some harder stuff floating around at some of these teenage parties. But when fentanyl is found, purchased, and consumed in a pressed tablet form, that worries me. And the bright blue colors, bright and pink and all sorts of stuff. Because when they start getting into teen parties, I mean, one pill can kill you. I don't want to sound like I'm trying to scare people with a billboard, but one pill can kill you.
Right.
And if this stuff is floating around and someone says, "Oh, this is a Xanax," because that's what the guy that sold it to him told him it was. No, that's fentanyl.
Wow.
And it's in so much of what we send when we confiscate drugs, or when the officers confiscate drugs on the side of the road and send them down to the state crime lab. So more and more and more different varieties of drugs are coming back mixed with fentanyl, and it's just terrifying. So that is a challenge I think that we face and will continue to face is fentanyl in this community.
You said you were backing that up with success, though.
Yes. Well, because it's not all just about arresting people who have and or distribute, fentanyl. Certainly that's a part of what we're trying to do to fix the problem. We're trying to bust the big deals and folks bringing fentanyl into our community. And we do that. We make those arrests, we make those prosecutions, and we try to make them stick because they're very important. But that's just one aspect. The other aspect is, of course, so that's the supply. We also got to hit the demand, and that's what I'm so proud of the county for doing. When I started as an assistant prosecutor in Berkeley, we didn't have the day report center. We didn't have Mountaineer Recovery Center, or any kind of rehab facility here. We didn't have adult or juvenile drug courts in Berkeley County. We had nothing. We had arresting people, putting them in jail, and then trying to figure out, if their lawyer could get them into some rehab somewhere, maybe they would file for bond or whatever. And under this administration, I would absolutely continue this. We have supported the county 100% in the efforts that have been made to try to give resources for those dealing with addiction in this area. Because if you don't do both, I mean, you still got to make arrests, you still got to bust the drug dealers, you've got to do all that. But if you do that and you don't address the problem from a compassion standpoint and trying to fix the addiction and give these folks resources, that you're just running on a treadmill unless you're doing that. And so the success, and then what I am so proud of, having seen it all develop during this time and been a part of it and supported it, is the amount of resources that we can offer to those going through addiction who get caught up in the criminal justice system. And it doesn't have to be for a dope charge. It can be for a retail theft. Well, okay, well, turns out this person has an addiction issue and they're willing to and they want help. Let's help them. And hopefully it stops them from coming back later. And it ultimately too, it saves the county money. It saves the taxpayers money, because while they're getting that treatment, they're not sitting in our jail, clogging up our jail and increasing our jail bill. And hopefully, if it goes well, they don't go back to the jail. So they save money in the long run for the county. And, I don't think anybody who's been involved in criminal justice here in Berkeley County in the last 10 years, would suggest that we're just trying to wrest our way out of this problem. Like, clearly not. We all are bought in on this has to be a two. You have to go after the dealers, and you have to try to find justice that way, but you also have to have compassion and facilitate resources for people to get out of the cycle.
That's really well explained. Thank you. It's clear you have a lot of passion for the process. And I had a great question as you were wrapping up there, and it's escaping me now. What other things really get you excited about the opportunity in this position for you?
I don't know if excited is the word. We joke about catching the belly fire about things getting fired.
Actually, that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah. For me, it's always been about kids. So when I first came over as an assistant prosecutor, I took the child abuse and neglect docket, which is a handful. I mean, it's a tough docket. It was a tough docket then. It's a tougher docket now. That position represents the DHHR, like CPS. So if CPS, Child Protective Services, yes, if they have removed a child from a home due to concerns, then that initiates a separate type of case that the prosecutor's office handles. It's not a criminal case. It's the one thing we do in Berkeley County that's not, one of the few things we do that's not criminal. It's technically a civil proceeding, but it's in circuit court, and we represent the department, the CPS, and we try to, the whole goal of that system is to make sure that the kids are safe. And the goal is to try to reunify the family if possible, give help to the parents, in whatever that looks like for any particular case, and allow the family to be reunified unless that's something that just can't happen, the kids being safe. And then we seek to terminate parental rights for parents. But
let me see if I understand. Scenario that I can truly say I understand.
Sure.
Let's say there's a first offense domestic violence accusation from one party or the next, or both. There's a child involved. There's civil ways to work through it without taking the child out of the family.
Sure.
Right? And then there's civil ways to work through it with the husband and wife to figure it out, whether they separate physically or, I'm not really sure what the scenarios are. I haven't been involved. But ultimately the goal of your position is to keep the family unit together as much as they're willing to be together.
Yes.
For the health of the child in particular.
Yes. And it always just comes back to the safety of the child and what's in the best interest of the child. I used to, actually, for years, the Supreme Court had asked me to do trainings on that area of law throughout the state. It was a lot of fun. I got to go all over the state, give presentations to teach lawyers who were interested in going into that field of law, how the cases work, and had this really funny, I thought it was funny. Maybe they didn't think it was funny. I put memes and good jokes and stuff in there.
Lighten the content. Sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. And but yeah, so I did that for a while. And just still, even though I don't do that work in the office anymore, I have a passion for it. But one of the jokes that I remember making during that presentation was, hey, if you forget what you're supposed to be doing at any given hearing, you can always fall back on best interest of the child. If you can make your argument find its way to this point of, well, but it's in the best interest of the child that we X, Y, Z, then you'll probably be okay. Then you're at least in the right hemisphere.
This kind of reminds me of a podcast we had a while back, Amy Serval.
Ah, yes.
Children's Home Society of West Virginia, I think it's called.
Yes.
I look forward to having her on, Amy. Series. We're doing a series of things. But is that one of the organizations you could work with to help placement or help to keep things healthy?
Absolutely. And Amy, I have known Amy for a very, very long time, since she used to work for CPS when I first met her. She was up in Morgan County. She was doing that work, and she was great at it. She's great at everything that she does. And yes, Children's Home Society is one of our biggest partners, not just for that docket at the office, but just in general in the community. As a community partner with the prosecutor's office, they are phenomenal in what they offer kids and parents in this area. And because also within Children's Home Society, CHS, is the Victoria's House Child Advocacy Center, which I actually just told Senator Craig Blair when I was in Charleston a couple of weeks ago. I can't do my job without them, without the Victoria's House Child Advocacy Center. I just can't. There's no way. And those cases involving children and child victims are, well, we talked about belly fire. That's it for me. Those cases are what motivates me more than anything else every day. And we could not do our job without the Child Advocacy Center.
Well, the next thing on my notes to talk about, so again, thank you for all that. That was really good. I'm trying to pivot this in a certain direction. And one of the things I want to talk about is, you want to talk about also is the importance of primaries and voting in the primaries.
Yes.
But before we get on that, tying it into belly in the fire motivations, this is probably a perfect time to allow you to set yourself aside from other people who are running. Or why should people truly want to vote for you, even if they don't know who the other people are in the race? But like this is your call to action. Why is it important to vote, and why are you the candidate that should vote for?
Sure. Well, it's important to vote. One, it's just your civic duty. I mean, we have the luxury in America of living in a place where it's the easiest that it could be for you to vote and participate in government. And you should. Because of that, you absolutely should. People fight and die all over the place for the right to have a say, to have democracy. And we take it for granted here in America. I mean, our turnout rates are normally pretty low, for voter turnout. But especially when you're talking about local races are, that's the stuff that really, in my opinion, affects your day-to-day life more than who is sitting on Pennsylvania Avenue down in DC.
I totally agree.
And taking the opportunity to do a little research, to try to find out who these people are, and vote with your conscience. It's so important because you could change so much about the place that you live and your home, your community. You can change that so much by going to the box and who you vote for. So I highly recommend it. And the reason that I would ask people to vote for me, if I were to channel it down, my slogan for the campaign is tough, fair, experience. But I'm going to shorten it even more. Experience. Prosecuting crime is different than practicing any other kind of law. It is unique in our American system, and it's incredibly important. Who you have as your county prosecutor is incredibly important. It's essentially the chief law enforcement officer of the county. So between the sheriff and the prosecutor, those are your top two law enforcement officers of the county. And it's important to have experience to have a prosecutor, an elected prosecutor with experience for several reasons. But you're electing someone for their judgment is really what it comes down to. The prosecutor decides who to charge, what to charge them. And that might sound like not a lot, but that can be huge as to whether you formally charge someone or not. And if you do formally charge them, what crimes do you charge them with? And then after the case starts, the prosecutor decides if there's going to be a resolution, like an agreement of some kind. 90+% of criminal cases don't go to a jury trial.
What's 90%?
Oh, it's over 90%.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it might be over 95%. So if there's going to be a deal that's reached, who's looking at that deal and looking at it, what the outcome is, and going, you know what, I think that's fair. I think this is fair. I think this is justice. That's what the prosecutor is doing. So their judgment is paramount. And my experience as a prosecutor here in Berkeley County for 9 years, handling every type of case that you could imagine, I've seen so much and I've learned so much. You know, I know what it feels like to win. I know what it feels like to lose. I know what it feels like to have children testify about terrible things that have happened to them, and to know that you're it. You've met with this child. You've colored pictures with this child. You've promised them, you know, I'm gonna fight for you, and gone through it all. And that's not experience that you can get from watching TV. It's not experience you can get from sitting on the other side of it. To have the burden of proof, which is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that's our burden. That's what we have to overcome to say someone who is presumed innocent, well, now you're presumed innocent until proven guilty, right? Well, that's where we come in, proven guilty. And you can't just fake experience when it comes to that. And the other reason that experience is important in that field is when it comes to, this is kind of nerding out, so I won't go too far, but I like to call it high-level prosecution, which is, you know, your standard case comes through the door. A police officer has done an investigation and made an arrest. Sometimes those investigations are just, hey, I pulled somebody over on the road, I saw this, I saw that, and I charged it. Others are obviously more detailed investigations. But it comes through the door, and the officer has their police report, and they put it in your lap, and here's your case, Mr. Prosecutor, and you go with it. And there's a lot of cases that are like that. But when you have experience and you know these investigators and they trust you and you trust them, and then you start collaborating before the arrest, then you start collaborating during the investigation, and you start working on, hey, well, you know, I've got a contact at the FBI who can do this. Why don't we get him this data and see what we can, you know, yada, yada, yada. And you're working together and you're part of the investigation on the front end. That on big, complex, and important investigations and prosecutions, there's no substitute for that teamwork and collaboration. And that's what I can bring. Because of the relationships that I've built with these investigators, because of Katie allowed me to start the cold case unit years ago, which is a pet project and passion of mine, going back and combing through and reigniting cold investigations that have led to prosecutions, convictions. For thus far, we have 3 murder convictions, all receiving life without the possibility of parole.
And it was a cold case.
Yeah, well, yeah, there were 2 different cold cases. They've resulted thus far in 3 convictions.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're so proud of it. And so that's why the experience is important. Judgment, relationships built, even, you know, our friends at the Child Advocacy Center and the Children's Home Society. I mean, they call me all the time. I call them all the time. Hey, we're working this case. What do you think about this? You know, you put somebody who's not a part of that world and doesn't have that experience and those connections into the seat as prosecutor, and it's going to be a different picture than what it would be if I get to carry it.
It's pretty amazing. Definitely, you definitely cited your experience there. That's great. So I remember the question. What question should I be asking? And I'm not asking. Can you think of one?
Well, if you'd asked back then, I would have said the question is, why is experience important?
Yeah. Well, if you don't have one, that's okay. And I should ask that in the pre-meetings, but
It's a
it,
great
it just
question.
kind of came to me like when I was saying in the pre-meeting, why shouldn't I run for office?
Yes,
And I asked
yes.
somebody who's in office, numerous people, why is it not right for me? Rather than feeding the ego saying why is it for me?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you have the right passion, right experience, and that it sounds like you're a great candidate for this position.
Thank you.
What do we gotta say to drive it home? These are final moments. Call
Sure.
to action.
Absolutely. To drive it home, I would just say who your prosecutor is, your county prosecutor, is very important. And I think everybody should educate themselves as best they can. I've got a website out there. I've got a Facebook. You can reach me through those if you have any questions. I'd love to hear what people around here think are important issues to them. I know what's important to me, but I'd love to hear what other people think. And I just I ask for your vote because I'm so proud of what we've done, what we're doing, and what we can do. And I have the support of so many folks. Obviously the other prosecutors in the office, child advocates, victim advocates throughout the county are very, very supportive. Um, I've been endorsed by the Troopers Association as far as law enforcement is concerned, and there's a reason for that. And that reason is that I really do believe I'm the right man for the job. I didn't envision getting into politics, but I think at this point, um, I just ask for the opportunity to carry forward the great success that we've had and that we are continuing to have here in Berkeley County.
Well, I love the experience, and like I said, I would always prefer to keep experience where experience should be deployed. I think we should wrap it up there. Joe, thank you for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Good luck in the election.
Thank you, sir.
Good job, man.
Oh, man, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was really good. Let's get this shut down.